One of the kids' current favorite movies is called Wreck-It Ralph. Has anyone seen it? Yes, babe. I think we watched it twice this past week. It's a really cute, it's an animated comedy. It came out in 2012. And it's one of those kids' movies where there's something for the parents or adults who watch it as well as the kids. Wreck-It Ralph is part of an arcade video game which has 8-bit graphics, a throwback to the 1980s video games. And there's cameos by Sonic the Hedgehog and Pac-Man and Q*bert, some of those old school video game guys. Ralph is the bad guy in his game, and he's tired of being the bad guy. The good guy is Fix-It Felix Jr., which is the name of the game, and when he fixes things, he gets fresh-baked pies and a medal at the end of the game, whereas Ralph, as the bad guy, gets thrown off the roof into a mud pit. And Ralph doesn't mind that part too much because it's part of the game. He knows that. What he minds is that even when the arcade is closed, even when there's no game going on, the other people, the other characters in his game still treat him as the bad guy. They still ostracize him. They can't see him as anything besides the bad guy. And when they throw a party for the 30th anniversary of their game, they don't even invite Ralph. Fix-It Felix is the hero, even though Felix wouldn't have anything to fix if Ralph didn't wreck something in the first place. And so the storyline of the movie is how Ralph learns to be more than just a bad guy, and how the other characters of his game learn that there's more to him than just wrecking things. I mentioned last week that the previous Friday I did a memorial service for a member of the community, and how that person wasn't a great guy in some ways. He was an alcoholic, and I don't even know all the details. Yet his family also stressed to me how generous and giving he was, living out what Jesus says in our gospel this morning. When someone asks you for something, give it to them. And when someone wants to borrow something from you, lend it to them. Jesus says we are to live generously. And that's part of what this person did. He wasn't perfect, he didn't have it all together, but he had that part right. And I mentioned the service to a colleague of mine this past week, and my colleague told me that I got that part right, because I saw the guy as a whole person. The alcoholism was not the whole story on his life. The generosity was not the whole story on his life. There are both two parts of it, good and bad. And we all have that in each of us. We all have things we do well, teachings of Jesus that we excel at. We all have parts that we get right. And we also all have parts that we struggle with. And all of that together makes up who we are. You see, who we are in our worst moments is not all of who we are. And who we are in our best moments is not all of who we are either. Any snapshot of you is not going to tell the whole story. And that's important to remember. Any title or role that you have is not the whole story. You are more than the sum of all of those parts. You're not only a teacher or a dad or a caregiver or a driver or a cook. If you remember Psalm 139, you are fearfully and wonderfully made by God. God intricately weaved you together in the depths of the earth. God knows you better than you know yourself. And you can't just look at one part of your life and say, that's who you are and that's what defines you. Because there's more to you than that. A link came up on my Facebook memories this past week that I had shared 2 years ago. And a couple of you read it and liked it 2 years ago. Because it tells you that too. Wonders of social media. It was an open letter to 20-somethings who were caught in the anxiety of perfectionism and overachieving. Generally, broadly speaking, we're teaching our young people that they have to be perfect, that they have to not only join the perfect sports team, go to the perfect school, find the perfect mate, work at the perfect job. We're setting the bar all the way up here, and it's creating a lot of anxiety when we fail. I can remember in my early 20s struggling with the idea of a soulmate, and is there only one person, one mate for each person? And when I'm dating a new guy, wondering, is he the one? Because only one person can be the one, by definition, right? It creates a lot of anxiety and pressure. The newest parenting book I'm now reading is called The Gift of Failure, reminding us parents that it's okay for our children to fail, because that's how they learn and how they become independent and how they become creative thinkers and contributors of society. We've got to let go of that perfectionism for our children and for ourselves, because none of us is perfect. None of us have it all together. And what we think in our least perfect moments when we're in the pit of despair is not the whole picture, even though it sure can be tempting to think this is all there is to life. Part of that letter from Facebook says, we're tempted to believe that there is no cause for hope. We're tempted to believe that at stake in every relationship is the possibility of finding our soulmate. We're tempted to believe that breaking up in a relationship means a rejection of our identity rather than deliverance from a potentially unhealthy relationship. The clock ticks and we name each tick a curse rather than thanking God for the gift of time. And we fail to see the world the way it really is. Continues by saying, beloved child of God, set your eyes on the truth about the world and determine to live in that world, not in the false world in which despair is possible, because that's not the real world. None of the stories we tell ourselves in our despair are truthful descriptions of the world. The truth about the world is that you don't have to become because you already are. God has already declared you worthy. You don't have to achieve that. You simply have to embrace it and allow yourself the time and the space to learn what it means to live as one already declared precious by God. God has already declared you God's child, beloved and accepted by God, wonderfully made by God, fully known by God, important to God. So all this striving that we do, trying to be perfect, sometimes down to the minutia of wanting to say the perfect thing and wearing the perfect clothes or having to drive the perfect car, if you believe the commercials, it gets really tiresome. It's tiring and it's a waste of our time and energy. We're not perfect. And to say so is to lie. Yet to give up hope and despair is also a lie. We are not who we think. We are not who we may think we are at our worst moments. There's more to us than that. And so all that being said, it makes it hard to know what to do with the last verse of our gospel passage today. It's usually translated as, be perfect, therefore, just as your heavenly Father is perfect. The translation that we read here, that Larry read for us this morning, said, therefore, just as your heavenly Father is complete in showing love to everyone, so you must also be complete. Even being told to be complete can add some undue pressure, though. And so I found one other translation. This is the one I put for our call to worship this morning. So I think that one we can work with a bit easier. It says, your kingdom subjects, so live like it. Live out your God-created identity. Live generously and graciously toward others the way God lives toward you. Live generously and graciously toward others the way God lives toward you. God is generous and gracious to us. Amen. God gives us everything we need and then some. God is kind and compassionate and considerate and good to us. God is gracious. And therefore we are to behave that way and have that attitude towards others. And that's how we live into that perfection that God's calling us to. And that's how we can fulfill the teaching of Jesus to be perfect, how other translations put it. In Methodism, we have 3 categories of grace. We talk about prevenient grace that comes before we even know God or even know we need God, that allows us to get to know God. We talk about saving grace, as in saving, salvation, the work of Jesus on the cross, the grace, the love that saves us. And then we talk about sanctifying grace or perfecting grace. One of the questions that's asked at ordination is, do you believe you'll be made perfect in this lifetime? And you're supposed to answer yes. It's kind of scary, right? Yeah. That yes, we believe this. Yes, we trust this will happen. It's a hope, it's faith, something not yet realized. And yet we do live trying to become more like Christ. Being saved isn't simply the end of the story. There's still then the Christian journey that we're on. And the what next is that we try to become more like Christ. We try to become a little bit more perfect, a little bit more generous and gracious. As United Methodists, we believe that we are going on to perfection. And so what that looks like is generous and gracious living, because God is generous and gracious towards us. It's kind of that other Bible verse I think we had in BBS last summer about we love because God first loved us. God loves us, and therefore we are to love each other. God is complete in showing love to everyone. God is perfect. God is generous and gracious toward everyone. And so therefore we are to be the same way. And with God's help, we can live into that. And we can do that. Thanks be to God. Amen.